Hello and welcome to Crisis What Crisis, a new podcast designed to be a useful field guide as we all try to navigate and come to terms with a dramatically changed world. Whether it's personal, professional or both, crisis is without doubt the new shared experience. I'm Andy Coulson, a former newspaper editor, Downing Street Director of Communications and one-time inmate of HMP Belmarsh. For the last 4 years, I've been putting all my experience, the good and the bad, to use as a strategic advisor to business leaders. And I can tell you that the bad has been just as useful as the good. And that got me thinking that there are plenty of great podcasts out there where you can hear stories of success. There are far fewer where you can benefit from the experience of those whose lives have properly unraveled. So in Crisis What Crisis, I'll be talking to the embattled, shamed, courageous, ruined, damaged, resilient, unlucky and lucky survivors of crisis. Some names will be familiar, some less so, but all our guests will talk about their crises honestly, often with humour, but always in the hope that what they have to share might be useful to anyone facing down their own demons and challenges. Put simply, these are crisis stories worth sharing. If you agree and enjoy what you hear, please do give us a rating and review. That way, even more people will hear them, and that, in the end, is what it's all about. Crisis What Crisis is generously supported by Mindstream, a brilliant company who harness the power of music for personal well-being, whether it be music for meditation, to help focus, sleep, stress relief, yoga and fitness, rejuvenation, even grief and loss. Mindstream is there to improve human performance. I've tried it, it works, and I'd recommend having a listen to the Mindstream catalogue yourself. Just search Mindstream, that's mind with a Y, on Spotify. Thanks again for joining me. This podcast, like most other things these days, was recorded remotely. The sound quality at times, I'm afraid, is not the greatest, but thanks in advance for sticking with it. I hope you'll agree at the end that it was worth it. It was also recorded before the latest Tier 4 restrictions were announced. I'm joined today by the living legend that is Wilko Johnson for a conversation that I think will provide a truly unique perspective on crisis. Acclaimed as one of rock's most charismatic and influential performers, Wilko shot to fame as a member of Dr. Feelgood. It's fair to say that without him, we might not have had Paul Weller or Joe Strummer for that matter. To say Wilko himself fully embraced life as a rock star through the decades that followed would be an understatement. In 2009, the Julian Temple documentary, Oil City Confidential, told the story of Canvey Island's most famous sons, Dr. Feelgood. And Temple said of Wilko, he is an extraordinary man, one of the great English eccentrics. After he left Dr. Feelgood, Wilko said fired, they said of his own accord, he never stopped performing in his own bands and with others, including the Blockheads. He also appeared as the executioner in 2 series of Game of Thrones, his trademark 1,000-yard stare landing him the role. But then, in January 2013, Wilko was diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer and was told by doctors that his astonishing life would end within the year. Wilko refused chemotherapy and prepared to die, but only after performing a series of farewell concerts and completing a final, what turned out to be, hit album with Roger Daltrey. The diagnosis, he said, made him feel vividly alive. But towards the end of the year, and after an extraordinary intervention from a fan who also happened to be a cancer specialist, Wilko was urged to seek a second opinion. As a result, he discovered that the 3-kilogram tumour that he'd been told would kill him was in fact treatable. He underwent radical 11-hour surgery to have it removed, along with his pancreas, spleen and intestines. The following year, Wilko was presented with the Q Magazine Icon Award and on stage announced that he was now cancer-free, that he was back, in fact, from the dead. Wilko Johnson, thank you for joining us on Crisis What Crisis.
Hello.
It's great to have you here. We're talking, Wilko, as the government has just put your hometown and my old haunt, Southend, into Tier 3. How have you been reacting to this kind of restricted life that we've been living?
But because of my age, for one thing, I'm 73 now, and because of my what happened to me with the cancer and everything, I was one of these especially vulnerable people. And I was told that I had to go into what they call shielding.
Yes.
Meant that I had to be here alone in my place, and I wasn't even allowed to step out of the door.
How did you react to that, Wilko? I mean, I'm guessing that is not a natural state for you.
I mean, at that point, I didn't realise how extended this crisis would be.
Yes.
Well, it didn't freak me out first of all. Realising that the UK tour we had coming up was obviously going to have to be cancelled or postponed, but the idea of lounging about at home, I've had plenty of practice of that. If you're a musician, you get this. You do a tour, and then you'll be home for 2 or 3 weeks. So you're quite used to just doing what you like for. So it was nothing. So I sat down and in this room, and first of all, it was like a 50s science fiction film, first of all, wasn't it? It was real kind of Quatermass.
Yes.
This invisible threat that's going to kill the whole world, and you mustn't step outside your door, or it will get you. And that was all very weird. And then once the weirdness had worn off, and you just get into this eternal day that every day's the same, and yes, it's.
Well, I'm interested a little bit later to ask you how, given what you've been through, how you kind of approach what is a kind of crisis that everyone's facing. But let's get to that. Wilko, we're here to talk about crisis. As I mentioned, it's a subject that you have, I think it's fair to say, a truly unique perspective on. But can we perhaps start with the less acute crises in your life? Your brilliant autobiography is the story of an eventful but also a pretty chaotic life, as you describe it. As I mentioned in the intro, you became famous as a guitarist in Dr. Feelgood, one of the bands that sort of built the bridge, if you like, for punk. But you left suddenly in April 1977. Was that your first crisis? Did it feel like that at the time?
Yeah, I mean, let's make it clear that, yes, it was a crisis because, no, I didn't leave. They chucked me out of the band. This was we were making our fourth album. Our previous album had been a big number one hit, and we'd started to make inroads into America, and this album we were making was very important. I was the songwriter, and during the so we're recording this album. I've been beating my brains out writing songs for this album, and we'd got down to Rockfield Studios and were making this album. There was a big argument, which I think that they had really manufactured. There was.
They wanted you out.
Yeah, and I mean, well, I'm going to say it now. Sod it. It was absolutely ignoble. They waited until we had recorded the songs I'd written, until we got the tracks recorded. And then manufactured this argument, and it went on all night. And by the morning, I was out of the band. They chucked me out of the band. When you're in a band, and really it becomes your family, it becomes your world, and suddenly to be ejected from that is and I had no one with me. I mean, not to do with the business. I did almost everything wrong. You know, I thought, what am I going to do? Well, I'll just start another. I'll have to get another band together and get back on the road. And
what should you have done?
I was lost and confused, and what I wanted to do was just get. So I kind of the first people that come up to me, you know, I started a band.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have done that, and I shouldn't have done that. I was completely cut off from anyone in the biz, really. I think there were about 2 people who used to phone me up. Lemmy used to call me up. Just took. I mean, you know, Lemmy's not going to give you fatherly advice. So, yeah, I was lost, and I didn't do the right thing.
You were married to Irene, your childhood sweetheart, who you met as a teenager on Canvey Island. You were married for 40 years. She very sadly died in 2004 from cancer. Clearly a heartbreaking crisis for you and for your sons, Matthew and Simon. And one that you've said that you've never really recovered from.
I don't know, what can I say about Irene? She was, yeah, you know, we were teenagers and we got married and we were together all that time, and she was one of the, yeah, she was an exceptional person, and her presence and that has definitely saved me. I mean, obviously in times like that, with the field breaking up and that, you know, she's just looking after me. It's been 15 years now, I think, since she died, and I don't think, I haven't spent a waking hour without thinking about her. You know, I think about her all the time. You know, people saying a bereavement is like losing a limb. It's true. You know, like as I've lost an arm or something, and because if you were to lose an arm, you know, from then on you would obviously be constantly aware that there was missing.
Yes.
You know, you can get used to it, and you can live with it, and your life can carry on. But you're always aware. It's just gone, and so you can't just forget about it. This metaphor is even more appropriate because she was like a right arm to me. She looked after me, man. She was the practical one, you know, and she protected me and looked after everything.
Wilko, your career took a surprising but brilliant turn when you landed a role in Game of Thrones. How on earth did that come about?
I got this thing. Would I go to this audition? And I didn't know about Game of Thrones. I didn't know about the book or anything. Anyway, they said to me to go to this audition and it's for a part. What did they say? It's for an American television series.
Right.
I thought, it must be something like Xena the Warrior Princess or something.
A strange one to have thought of, Wilko. You don't mind me saying so.
I thought, maybe I'll get a leather jacket out of it. And the first shooting I did was over in Ireland. And I got to Ireland. When I got to where it was happening, I was on, this ain't Xena the Warrior Princess. It was like massive, 100 people, there's people up ladders.
Where's Xena?
Yeah, you know, it was obviously a big movie, you know. And I'm like, wow, you know. And I'll tell you what, it was fantastic. It was so much fun. It was like because so I've got all this gear on, right? Chain mail and a sword on my back and stuff like that. And I think the first scene we filmed was in there's a scene where we're in some torchlit room, right? And there's all these warriors and that, and there's the king, and the king is having a sort of altercation with Sean Bean, and there's a thing. There's some point where Sean Bean turns around and makes some offensive comment about me. And of course, I just give him a dirty look, you know, because I can't speak because I ain't got a tongue. But anyway, doing this thing, it was great. It was like, because you're in this kind of, as I say, in this kind of torchlit room with everyone dressed up in armour, swords and stuff like that, and you can't see the cameras, right? And man, it was just like being a kid playing.
Yeah.
But only you've got real swords.
Yeah.
Oh wow! It's so much fun. It was great. Yeah.
Okay, it wasn't. It wasn't long after your last appearance, in fact, on Game of Thrones, because I think you're in 2 series. It wasn't long after that that life took a very different turn, and that you were diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
Yeah.
Just tell me about that day when you were, sat in front of your doctor. It's the kind of conversation that everybody thinks about and everybody dreads.
I found this little lump on my stomach, right? And it was just, I don't know, small. But it was a lump, you know. In the bath, you thought, what's that? You know, I'll be a bit of that. And I didn't. Despite, Irene's death and some other people I'd known that had died of cancer, it just didn't cross my mind. I don't know, maybe I didn't want to think that. I don't know. At around about Christmas time, I think it was, my number one son, Matthew, came over with his family from Dubai, where he lives, and for Christmas, and I showed it to him. He kind of grabbed it and said, "Right, you're coming up to the hospital," and he just kind of in the car. We went to the hospital. We went into the hospital, and went into this room, and I was with Matthew and another a friend of mine. And in the room was a doctor, and a lady, a nurse, I think, standing there. And then he said, "You have this mass on, did you say on your pancreas? I don't know." And I thought, oh. And he said, "Unfortunately, we can't operate on this." And I thought, And then he said it. "You've got cancer." And it was funny. Matthew burst into tears. So he'd lost his mum to this thing.
Yeah.
And Matthew started crying, "Oh, God, no, son, it's all right," but anyway, he said this to me, and it was far, I suppose everybody must imagine to themselves, how would I react to this?
Yes.
And how I reacted is that you said it, and I felt absolutely calm. I mean, steady as a rock. And I just thought, oh, so this is how it ends. I didn't freak. I didn't. I felt completely calm. I thought, right, well, that's it. And then I remember walked out of the hospital, and I live quite near the hospital, so I was going to walk home. I mean, it was a very, very lovely winter's day. And I remember looking up at the bare trees against this china blue sky and thinking, oh, how beautiful it looks. It's just so beautiful. Mm. And I suddenly, I started feeling this ecstasy. Everything just looked beautiful. And I remember thinking, like, that's it. The story's over. This is how it ends, and it's a beautiful day. And I remember walking home, and as I walked home, this feeling grew more and more on me. I felt, yes, I think ecstatic is the right word. Mm. I was thinking, wow, is this delayed shock or something? Maybe when I get home, I'm just going to collapse in a heap. But I didn't. And this feeling carried on, and I started calling friends and telling them. They told me at the hospital that they'd said, first of all, we can't operate on it. They'd said we could give you chemotherapy, which might slow it down, but it won't stop it. Hmm. And so I go, well, I mean that's a no-brainer, do you want chemotherapy? No, I mean, when everybody knows that chemotherapy is a horror in itself, and so I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. So I am going to die. And from what they said, I've just got a few months to live.
Can I stop you just for a second?
It wasn't painful.
Let me stop you just for a second, Wilko, because you say there that it was a no-brainer. And I'm not sure, if you don't mind me saying so, that that's the case, right? And this is what's remarkable about your reaction, is I think a lot of people, I suspect a lot of people listening to this podcast, would have seen that chemotherapy as a kind of life raft, right? Something to cling to, and something that might provide some hope. Obviously, with all the dangers and terrors that you instantly felt. But you were so clear. It's not something that you went home and thought about. You were instantly clear. No thanks.
No. I mean,
I'll take what time I've got.
But as I said, my immediate reaction when he said the words in the first consultation, he said, and they said to me that there was nothing we can do. You will die. They said 8 months, 10 months, and they said chemotherapy we can slow it down, but it can't stop it. We can't cure it.
Did they give you a sense of how long chemo might give you over and above those 10 months?
They said they could, but I mean, you're crazy. I mean, I can have 8 months. Or I'd known one or two people, including Lee Brillo from Dr. Feelgood, cancer. I remembered my brother went to visit him at that time. I didn't actually, but Lee had told my brother that he'd been through one course of chemotherapy, and he said it was so horrible. made him so ill. He said, "I'll tell you what, if that doesn't do the trick, and they want me to make another course, I'm not going to."
Yeah.
And
so Lee's experience, Lee, the lead singer of Dr. Feelgood.
Yeah.
His experience had kind of was in your mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, I knew. I remember from that when my brother told me that he had said that he would rather die than go through another course of chemotherapy. It was horrible, and I thought, and they'd said that all they could do was extend my life. I thought, well, what's the point in adding a few months of horrible sickness to your life? Just let it go. And I said this to the people at the hospital, and I think that they were very sympathetic to that attitude.
Yes.
I said it to the doctor. He said, well, we can just concern ourselves with palliative measures. But no, straight away I thought, no, don't struggle. This is going to kill you. Just go. Yeah. And then this, as I say, this kind of ecstasy that I'd experienced after being told, I don't know, it was, as I say, it was like, when they said it to me, and I thought, one of the things I thought, was, this is how it ends, we all, none of us know where we're going, but
yeah.
I know, and that just continued for me.
I mean, very quickly, very quickly, Wilko, you started to plan what would be the last months of your life. Were those decisions sort of made alone? Because it seems like you just had, you are not a man either seeking or needing advice. You have absolute clarity about what you wanted to do with that time and what you wanted that time to allow you to kind of do and say to your family, to your fan base, to for you as well, of course.
Well, as I said, when they told me about chemotherapy, and I thought, no, I don't want that. I'm going to die, so I'll just let it happen. And I'll know that this is it. This is just something that we all face in the end. And I mean, as I say, I had this lump on my stomach and that, but I wasn't in pain. And this kind of whole thing, the world did look so beautiful to me after this. It was like, and thinking, just that was my initial feelings. Just wow, it's like this is the end of the story. After all that, that was quite a kind of comfort to me in many ways.
You said that those those months that followed that diagnosis, that you had the most incredibly intense kind of insights, is the phrase you've used. Can you explain that for me a little bit more? What change did it cause, in you?
For instance, I've been walking in a crowded street, right? And this thing, you're going to die, right? Everybody knows they're going to die, but most of us don't know we're going to die soon, right? I would get there, you're walking in the crowded street, and somehow it felt kind of pity for all these people you're seeing. You're saying, look at all these people. They're all in the grip of mortality. They're mortal beings, and they don't think about it much, but they know. But for me, the question's answered, right? And somehow sometimes I kind of pity everyone else, because there they are living with the fear of death, which I had to do because it was sold for me.
So there was a freedom, for you.
Yeah, and I had just this whole thing. It led to a fantastic year. I mean, one thing I didn't want to do, I didn't want to go on stage sick. I didn't want people to see me like that. And I just thought, well, I've got, I don't know what. They told me I've got 10 months to live. How long is it going to be before I start looking, I don't know. But by that time, it was the summer was coming along, and I thought, well, that's great. I can get gigs, and it won't matter if I fall sick before the gigs because it's a festival. So
it won't impact. Yeah.
If I drop out, that's not going to. The festival will go on. We booked a farewell tour. So all the time I'm thinking, how long have I got while I'm capable of doing what I do? And I think it sold out in 5 minutes or something. This tour. I mean, I just things have never gone like that for me. And then we did the tour, and I was still on my feet. I was still okay. This lump was getting bigger and bigger. And by then, I kind of looked pregnant. And one of the festivals we did was Cornbury. By then, it was very well known about all of this. Right? I think I've been on the front page of every newspaper in England. I've been on the morning television and everything. I was and playing at the top of the bill at the Cornbury, there was Van Morrison, which is very good because I know Van and I'm a very fan. And I could see Van and say goodbye to him. And funnily enough, it was at that festival. There was this little Chinese chap, a photographer, running around taking pictures, and his name was Charlie Chan. And talking to Charlie Chan, I discovered that he was in fact a cancer surgeon. And anyway, that went by, and the year went by, and we were coming to the end of the year. I think the year was coming to the end, and Charlie Chan turned up at my place.
Turned up at your home?
Yeah. And he came in and he said, listen, if you were diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in January or whenever it was, by now you should be dead or very sick. Although, apart from the huge baby bump on my stomach,
I mean, this thing was huge, right? You were resting your guitar on it when you were playing, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you take your hands off your guitar, normally it lies flat, right? And it would kind of actually point forward,
Goodness.
And,
but other than that, you were feeling.
Yeah, I think I would kind of get sometimes, there would be kind of blood and stuff. But not pain. I just thought it was huge. It's great big lump.
So Charlie turns up at your door.
Yeah,
and he says, "You should be dead, or at least you should be very sick."
Yeah.
And he suggests you do what?
He said, "I want you to go and to see my friend Emmanuel Hugay, who, in fact, Mr. Hugay he's the chief transplant surgeon at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge." He said, I want you to go and see him. And I think actually already Charlie had already been told Emmanuel about me, and I think maybe they'd already obtained the scans that I'd originally had at Southend at the beginning of it all.
Right. Okay.
And anyway, Charlie said, yes, there's something strange, and I want you to go and see Mr. Hugay, Emmanuel Hugay, and see what he's got to say.
Given your absolute clarity about not wanting chemotherapy, to total acceptance of what is happening to you, did you resist?
No, because yes, I had decided that I didn't want to go for second opinions or anything like that. You know, I was sure they told me I was going to die. I'd had a biopsy done, which had been sent up to the London hospital, and that had come back. And that you know, so I thought, look, 2 hospitals have seen this, and they told me I'm going to die. So I don't want to spend any more time in hospitals. I remember when Irene was dying, that sitting in hospital corridors, and you know, I think, no, you know, I want to have a good time with what I've got left.
Yeah.
So, and but I thought, this, what I've got here is actually a cancer doctor telling me something and saying, yes, I want you to go see this guy. And so I thought, well, yes, okay, you know. So I did, and I met Mr. Hugay and this guy. Wow, what a guy! And he was talking about that it was operable. I remember he was saying, we're 99% sure that we can operate on. I mean, you didn't understand. I'd been living with this for months, and I'm sitting there looking at him, thinking, is this guy telling me he can save my life? And I thought, yes, he is. When we walked out from that first consultation, I was actually laughing because I was thinking that this, if you wrote this into a soap opera,
people would be turning off in disbelief.
Ridiculous, you know, like.
Exactly.
Thinking, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And
but Wilco, it wasn't straightforward, was it? I mean, he wasn't saying to you, look, here's a treatment. You know, you're going to be on a course of drugs, or we're going to find a swift and easy solution to this. Now that we've got the proper diagnosis, what he was saying to you was that you need to undergo a very complex, in some ways, kind of never been done before, 11-hour operation that, by the way, you may not survive. They felt that it was very clearly worth the risk.
He's very, Mr. Hugay, he was very, very clear and very precise about it. I mean, just within minutes of starting to talk to him, I absolutely trusted him.
You felt for yeah. How quickly did you have the operation?
It was. I think he said. I think we went in for another consultation after that quite quickly, and because he told me later, he said he didn't want to try and persuade me in any way, right? Which I noticed he did. He just explained everything he knew, he thought about it, and his team and their opinions, and he didn't. And then I said, oh, well, go ahead. And then just after that, he said to me, I'm very glad you said that. He said, because I tell you, he said, if it was my father or myself or a member of my family, I know that's what I want. I didn't want to persuade, you know, ethically, he didn't, you know.
Yes, of course.
So he was pleased, and then I remember him saying, "Of course, this is going to be a major operation." He was telling me how they were going to, you know, they've been planning it. You know, he was saying he was going to have a team of transplant surgeons standing by, because he said there was, looking at the picture, there was something about that there might have been a major blood vessel underneath this tumour that might be damaged, and they would need to do a transplant. They would have to take a vein out of my neck and put it in there. And so there were a team of guys, the transplant guys, ready to do that. It was, yes, it was.
I'm just obviously, it's such a unique situation. I'm just, fascinated to try and understand how you then, from a psychological point of view, right, from your mindset, how do you readjust? How do you kind of turn yourself back in a different direction, if you like, in that way?
I don't know, because in a way that, as I say, from the beginning, I just decided right, I accept this. I just want to make the most of my time.
Yeah.
And as I say, when being confronted with these people saying we can do this, and it was just, I would never have dreamed it. I decided.
No, it must have just been
at the very beginning, unreal. I decided to put it out of my mind. Just don't even fantasize about a miracle cure or something like that.
Did part of you also, Wilko, think, you know what, through extraordinary and, almost kind of unbelievable chain of events, set of circumstances, you talk almost with a sense of gratitude about that time that you had. Before the second diagnosis, when you had this clarity and this kind of view of the world, that you had that freedom that you described.
Absolutely.
Gratitude, a word actually that applies here.
I mean, God, there were like many times of just sitting here in this room, and with it, and think, you start thinking about some pretty profound things. I mean, genuinely, and because it's all like a fading dream to me now.
Really.
You start thinking about it, about existence and thinking truly profound things that really resonate, and things that you'd never feel before. And I remember sometimes thinking, wow, the things I'm sitting there meditating on this, I could never have done this in the normal way of things. Well, I tell you what, sometimes I tell you what, it's almost worth it. One thing about it, once I got the offer of the operation and everything, I was thinking, well, this has worked out good for me, because either now I'm going to be cured. I'm going to be miraculously released, or I will die on the operating table. So I escape all that suffering. So, I found it was a pretty good deal.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I am an atheist. I didn't have any problems wondering about what happens next or something. So there were no fears like that to contend with. But I thought, yeah, that's it, and I will escape suffering.
You're an atheist, but you're also the most astonishing optimist, because at a number of junctures here in this story, as I touched on earlier, there were options for you to feel and think differently, as I think an awful lot of people would have done. I want to finish by asking you for your 3 crisis cures, as we do with every guest. These are three things that kind of you rely on, lean on in the tough times. Can't be another person is the only rule. What comes to mind?
Well, as I say, in the crises that I've described, for instance, when Irene died, I haven't got any good advice. I know it was like when my crisis was the feel good busting up. I had my own favourite medicines I would take anyway then, and I would just start doing a lot of that. I just sometimes resort to alcohol, which I think is a very bad one. Alcohol it can turn a depression into despair, and although it's hard sometimes when it's something is just too hard and you can't do anything about it and you're helpless, you can get lushed out, but you're not going to feel very good the next morning.
So that's what you. That's what you avoid. What do you embrace? I'm assuming that music, of course, is incredibly important to you. Is there a particular piece of music? Literature is such
very important to me. It's a huge thing. But there are so many great works of literature that you can. In fact, I've just spent couple of days without sleep. I've been reading Moby Dick.
Right.
What a book!
Amazing, yeah.
Oh, what a book!
Yeah.
And I don't know, but that's for me. I mean,
that's exactly what I'm asking. The stuff that's for you. I mean, you mentioned, if we talk about music, you mentioned Van Morrison earlier.
Yeah.
Does he make the list?
Absolutely. I would. In fact, I would say that album, St. Dominic's Preview.
Yeah.
I think it came out in 1972, something like that. And I know that this was at a time when I don't know, a few ups and downs. And I know that album it's such a great album. And it finishes with this a fantastic number called Almost Independence Day. Long one. Like Van's really doing this, and I remember that when that came out. And when I had bad times, I could say I'm going to put that record on, and it finishes with this long, droning synthesizer note, right? And this is Almost Independence Day. It's a song about looking out over the Russian River, San Francisco, and this final note is kind of, you think, it's going to be all right. It's yes, I recommend that.
Thanks so much, Wilko, for joining us today. You've been so generous with your time and in the way that you've talked about your life, about your crises. For my part, I won't forget your description of those days after your diagnosis, when you were unburdened of the baggage we all carry with us. That question, when will our time be up? That was incredibly powerful, Wilko, and valuable. So thanks again, and I hope sincerely that you're back and performing soon, sir. Cheers. All the best. Thanks for listening to Crisis What Crisis. Do feel free to send us your feedback. You'll find our contact details and our show notes giving you the key insights from our guests at crisiswhatcrisis.com. There are more useful conversations on the way, so please do subscribe. And if you like what you hear, give us a rating and a review. It really helps. Thanks again.